Hey, what's up guys, Ruff here. So looking at 2024, this has been a year where many games deemed as woke have failed. Now in a moment where it might be time to self-reflect in the industry, we're seeing the blame placed not on developers or games journalists or anything like that. We're seeing the blame now placed on YouTubers. That's right, it's YouTubers' fault that all of these games and shows have failed. Not because they're woke, not because they're bad quality, it's just because of YouTubers. Now, who's making this claim? It's actually someone who's pretty well respected in the gaming industry, David Jaff. So they're responsible for the first two God of War games, and that is something that a lot of people have enjoyed. However, people are not enjoying his latest video. He uploaded this onto YouTube and promoted it on Twitter where he says, "Did YouTube grifters kill Dragon Age the Veilguard?" I think so. I mean, EA should have seen it coming and been ready, but yeah, I think if they didn't pull the trigger on this title, they sure as shit loaded the gun. Assholes. Let's discuss. Yeah, as you might expect, this is not going to go over very well. Let's play some clips from this video and hear what he has to say on this topic.
Really, at this point, all that gaming community that you're talking about has done is they've made it so they've actually made games worse, which is what they say they're trying to not do. Because they have the charismatic grifters that make the videos that for whatever reason people respond to. People who haven't actually played this game will hate it just because they're sort of told to hate it. And so what does EA do next time? They don't make Stellar Blade. They just continue to sort of, vanilla the fuck out of everything they work on and make sure that no one's going to have anything to complain about.
So we're off to a pretty bad start. As you can see, his definition of grifter is just people who disagree with me, but obviously we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But this is the problem. They don't understand why YouTubers and their coverage of gaming-related news and stuff like that resonates well with people. It's because they are informing people. They're not influencing people. They're not saying, hey, don't buy this game. They're saying, here's some relevant information that the games journalism scene, for example, won't be covering. And I think this might be relevant to whether or not you want to purchase this game. And it's not just reviews of gameplay or storytelling or anything like that that's more functional in the game, but people also care about who is developing these games and how they view certain people, including potential customers. This year alone, we have covered literally dozens of people from the gaming industry who have hurt the chance of success for their games by saying disparaging things about potential customers, by alienating some of their customers based on things like whether or not they're white or they're men, or in general, sometimes they just say, we hate gamers. That matters to people. It might not matter to everyone, but to a lot of people it matters. And the proof is in the pudding with how games like that have failed so badly. It's negative PR that happens for no reason. I mean, how do people react when they hear someone, a developer of a game, say, white men, this game is not for you. You're not the intended audience. That's a horrible look, not just for the white men who might be buying the game, but a lot of reasonable people look at that and say, wow, that's the kind of person making this game. I might not fall into the white male category, but I don't want to support some lunatic like that. It matters to people, especially when games journalists, they don't cover stuff like that. They ignore it because it doesn't serve their narrative, and covering that stuff would hurt their connections to the industry. That's why YouTubers without those connections are very important. Now, he's asking the question, what is EA supposed to do in the situation with Veilguard and all the criticism they're facing? Well, I don't know. Make better games. That's the solution. Should they make Stellar Blade? Yeah, they should make a game like Stellar Blade. Look how that went. Stellar Blade and Shift Up, they listened to what gamers want, and look at the response. It's been amazing, and that's not surprising at all, but a lot of companies, they get lost in the sauce. What are they supposed to do? Listen to gamers. Listen to what they want. EA, BioWare, any of these other development teams or publishers, they are a business, and they forget that. They are a business. They are not activists. That is the issue. People don't want activists in the gaming scene. It is annoying. It's off-putting to a lot more people than it is something that is enjoyed. And that is just a simple fact. But let's continue on.
They straight up ask you if you want transgender game options 1 hour in. You select yes or no. So all the people bitching invited it into their game. I don't even know what it asked, but this character apparently is the Barv trans character, and so far there's nothing. Not that that needs to be. I mean, to me, that's the equivalent of saying, "Do you want black people? Do you want black people in your game? We have a button that'll get the blacks out."
This is one of those times where I don't think there's really a whole lot I need to say. I think anyone who's being reasonable about what they just heard from David knows how unbelievably ridiculous that previous statement is. He is comparing black people to trans people. I'm sorry, these characters didn't come out in the game and say they're black. They came out and said they identify as non-binary. Comparing the two is so woke, it's backwards, which we're pretty used to in this scene, but let's continue on and hear about the Barv scene a little more.
That's the equivalent of it. But if that's what you're saying, I mean, I didn't even know that's what they were asking. The only thing I've come across so far, and again, I've seen that cutscene, it's terribly written and performed, the Barv thing, but the only thing I've even come across so far is when you're talking to characters and one of your multiple options is you can romance a character who is the same sex as your character. And
that's a wholly different thing than the Barv scene, okay? And also, spoiler alert, he says, this is all I've seen so far. He'll admit later on in the video, he's only played an hour of the game at this point, so he has not seen everything going on in this game with the woke stuff, and you can find it even on Twitter. You don't even have to play the game. There's tons of clips all throughout Twitter showing various examples of characters coming out as non-binary, sharing all these woke ideologies and things like that, and it's off-putting to a lot of people. Some activists and people like that, they might find it enjoyable, but clearly the proof is in the pudding with this game. It didn't do well. It did not succeed. It is a disappointment for BioWare and EA. There's no getting around that, and you have to reflect upon why that happened, why this game had such a disconnect with players, generally speaking. But let's look at the Barv scene, okay? No one forget about this nonsense. I mean, this isn't just a random scene. As he acknowledges, it's terribly written. I think even the slightest bit honest critics of this game have to acknowledge the writing of this game overall was terrible. But let's remind ourselves how ridiculous things get.
Pounding that snake's nose. She's still holding the ruby in her other hand. Maker's panties. I was so proud.
Oh,
Ah, shit. They're still holding it. Sorry.
what are you doing?
Pulling a barv.
Oh, okay. A barv?
Tradition in the Lords of Fortune from one of our old members, Barv. Good.
You get the point. So basically, I think there is a big difference between having an option to have gay romances in the game versus being preached at like this. I think there is a difference, and some people might hate it all, but I think there is a big difference between the two. This is ridiculous. Being treated like you're some child going through some moral lesson here, where you have to see a character being punished and having to go down and do push-ups to make up for misgendering someone in a fantasy game. This is clown stuff, okay? This is what's so off-putting to people, and I don't think it's really that surprising that people have such an issue with stuff like this existing in the game. But let's continue on. Let's listen to the next thing he has to say.
The grifters who hate woke still streamed the game and played it to finish grifting how bad the game was. So yeah, they didn't like it, but played it for views and ad revenue equals a grift, yeah. Avowed.
So that's a very simple point there in one sentence. I learned a lot about the perspective of people like this. So they claim that YouTubers critical of the game are grifters if they're not playing the game, right? They're just trying to spark outrage for ad revenue on YouTube or what have you. But then the YouTubers who actually complete the entirety of the game while being critical of it in their review are also grifters. So whether you play the game or you don't, you're a grifter because you're critical of the game. That's ridiculous. Like I said, these people just equate grifter to person who disagrees with me. A grifter not only does something they don't like, a grifter does something they don't like or says something they don't like, and then pretends like they do. Like many journalists in the scene who are saying, wow, Veilguard, Game of the Year candidate here. IGN, for example, giving it a 9 out of 10. Stronger than Black Myth Wukong, for example. And a lot of people realize that's a load of BS. Nobody's buying what games journalists have to say in their reviews because people view them as grifters because they're the ones trying to shill. That's part of their job. They don't want to upset people in the industry because it supports them financially. These YouTubers he's referring to, just generally speaking, who are critical of Veilguard, they genuinely are critical of Veilguard. And that's not surprising. A lot of people are very critical of Veilguard. It's not surprising that YouTubers wouldn't like this, especially YouTubers who are anti-woke. Of course they're not going to like this game because not only is it woke, there's also not a lot of saving grace for this game either. The best thing going on in Veilguard is the combat system, which is an improvement from Inquisition, but people fell in love with Dragon Age largely because of the story. I think that's the most important thing, and the story is awful, and it's riddled with woke stuff that just was off-putting to so many people. Again, the people at BioWare and EA, they're not activists. They're businesses. They need to pay attention to what people want, what their customers want. What happened to the customer is always right. I guess it doesn't matter, these companies, and they don't care about losing millions and millions of dollars. It's just very bizarre to see, but let's continue on.
Dev said they're making the game really woke to upset Elon and Grums. Well, I don't know. I mean, I know what you're talking about, Eddie. I know the art director was basically pushing back because Elon got upset and Grums got upset that there are, God forbid, pronouns in that you can select or maybe not even select in Avowed. And so the art director got pissed off and the community manager shut her account down. But I don't know, the game's almost done, so I don't really,
So you see, this is why these YouTubers are important. Look at the way he's describing the Avowed situation. He's basically making it sound like this art director was attacked by Elon Musk and Mark Kern over pronouns being in the game. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. And for a lot of people, that's enough to cancel their pre-orders. They don't like having that stuff in their game at the start here. And again, if that offends you, who cares? That's the reality, clearly, based on a number of woke games that have failed. But the Avowed situation is so much more. And the real reason people are upset, and it should upset anyone who's looking at this objectively, is the unhinged stuff this art director has been saying consistently on social media. He did not just respond to Elon Musk criticizing pronouns in a fantasy game. He called them sickos and said, "I wanted so badly to make him mad with my game, I cannot believe it actually happened. Just wait until you see the default, you sad little shit." Yes, so this guy's admitting his primary motivation for making this game is to spite people like Elon Musk. That's embarrassing. A lot of people see that and say, nope, not supporting this game. But it gets worse. They also say in other tweets that Elon is a sweet summer child in ignorance, and that his claims, Elon Musk claims that companies shouldn't be racist and sexist against white guys, will only embolden this art director. And again, calling him a bunch of names because they don't have any real argument against any of this stuff, and they know deep down how unhinged they are. But it gets even worse because he also says that he gives black artists priority in terms of potential employment and job opportunities within the company, which, I don't know, if you're a reasonable person seeing the Civil Rights Act of 1964 being violated, I think that should offend you. And it offends a lot of people enough to cancel their pre-orders of this game because this slop is being not only shared within the company, it's being supported by other people at the company. It's ridiculous. A lot of people hate this stuff, and it's getting really bad. I mean, you have people who used to be a part of the creation of the studio coming out and saying, you should sue. That's how bad things have gotten. This wasn't just Elon Musk making fun of pronouns in games. This went so much deeper. But you wouldn't find this information anywhere from your typical major gaming news sources, so maybe that's why you're uninformed. But there's, on one hand, I could count the actual games journalism networks that would have the balls to cover something like this. Isn't this like a radical story? You have the studio where the main person is potentially violating federal laws and is being called out by Elon Musk and is causing a major PR crisis for Microsoft. And also you have ex-studio members or ex-creators of the studio coming out and saying, yeah, you guys should start suing over this stuff. That's not interesting to IGN or any of these other major networks. Clearly, there's a lot of bias. And again, this is why people turn to YouTubers and other people who don't have these other priorities financially to keep their mouths shut on certain topics. But anyways, let's go back. There's more he has to say.
And I agree, Morgan, when you say, "Oh my God, again with this." I know, but this is the news of the day. You know, I mean, this is sort of what happens in the gaming world right now. We're still talking games. I'm still playing lots of games. We're still doing game design discussions, but these are the people that, you know, are influencing something. Don't know why.
Yeah, again, you don't know why because you're trying to be ignorant of the truth and what's actually happening, the reaction, and why people are resonating so well with what these YouTubers are saying to the point where, yeah, it's actually having some sort of an influence. And, you know, we hear every 2 seconds these YouTubers, these grifters, they're a small minority who affect nobody. And now all of a sudden they're so powerful, they're causing major AAA releases from respective franchises to fail. They're the reason, but they're also insignificant. It's very, very bizarre. And again, I don't really know what else to say in the situation. It's just a whole lot of deflection and no personal responsibility ever being taken on any of this stuff. And you can hear he also goes after Mark Kern multiple times, and he would actually respond. So Mark Kern would screenshot his promotion on Twitter for his video, and he'd respond by saying, "I'm not in a bubble. I blocked you because you were always so angry and mad and seemed to just look for things to complain about. And seeing it every time I logged on was pissing me off and bringing me down, and it creates a negative environment and serves to make gamers feel they are always victims, which in turn makes the gaming online space a horrible place to have meaningful chats about the medium I love." And this whole victimhood thing, we have seen people from the industry play the victim any opportunity they get, even when they're the bad actors in the situation. But overall, you know, based on that and the clip we just listened to, he's saying like, you know, I have the right to talk about these things going on in the industry. Well, why don't these other people have the right to talk about these things without being labeled grifters? I don't think you're a grifter for trying to share your opinion online, even though I disagree with a great amount of what you've said in this situation. I don't think you're a grifter. I'm not going to dismiss you. I think this is a good thing to have conversations, to be able to react to what other people are saying and being able to criticize their opinions. But dismissing it wholeheartedly while saying I also have the right to say these things and share my opinion, but I'm not the same as them, is just kind of ridiculous, especially when you say that you're so annoyed with Mark Kern that you don't even want to look at him online. But then in your video over here, you mention him like 3 or 4 times in the span of 7 minutes. Like, I don't get it. It's just weird. But there's one more clip I want to play here, and this will wrap up our coverage.
Now, by the way, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am curious, Nick, when you say you think it looks mediocre. So what,
Veilguard.
If somebody was in the market for an action RPG, not Baldur's Gate, not a turn-based RPG, like an action game, like, you know, like what you're seeing here, but there's still stats and a big story and characters and a party to build and all that. If this one's mediocre, which one would you suggest they play? Like, which one?
And isn't that like part of the problem? I mean, some people in the chat would point out there's some other alternatives to play in that genre, but isn't that part of the problem? Veilguard is pretty much it the last year since Baldur's Gate 3, and it's just not very good. It's lackluster. That's a problem. I mean, if you want to say there should be more games and more options to select, I think that's fair. But if Veilguard's going to be the main option, people have a right to be upset about nonsense being included in the game because that's what they've been looking forward to. There's not a lot of other alternatives right now for new games like that, and people are rightfully upset that it's just a pile of slop. It's just not very good. The reaction to this game is obvious. A lot of people not only dislike the woke things, but they also dislike the game mechanics itself. Again, like I said, combat is an improvement in the eyes of many since its previous title, but the story is a mess. Everyone has to acknowledge the story is a mess, and that's what's been key to the success of Dragon Age as a franchise. And overall, this video clearly didn't resonate. This is the first 6 or so comments in the comments section, just the first 6, and they're all negative. The echo chamber has been pierced. I mean, Twitter may applaud you for some of these opinions, but man, I don't know. It seemed to miss the mark entirely, and things aren't much better on the tweet that he shared promoting this video. You can see the top comments are critical, but also he adds this in response to them saying that he can't believe that there's been no coverage of Lego Horizon failing. I mean, personally, I did cover Lego Horizon, but it was like an afterthought in a video. I believe I covered it in about 2 minutes in the middle of a video talking about multiple subjects. It wasn't that interesting to people, wasn't that hyped up. Now, there's other games, you know, like Dustborn, that were never going to be big games, big AAA releases like Veilguard, with the reaction you would expect from YouTubers and alike. But that game was just ridiculous, right? Like I've said before, and I think people can agree even if they disagree with some of my takes, like if Dustborn was promoted as a parody, as a meme on cancel culture and things like that, I think it would have had much more success. But because it was unironic, it was just a joke. And that's why people talked about it, even though it was a smaller game. And it was never going to explode into some huge cult classic success. But that's just the reality of the situation. For games like Lego Horizon, they just weren't that interesting. They came from a lot of routes that people thought were, again, pushing some kind of agenda. But it just wasn't that popular of a game to begin with. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for this video. A bit of a long-winded one, but definitely worth sharing with you guys. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.